Christian, how far can Ben Simmons go?
Well, he's got to get a jump shot. It's like, it sounds humorous and all that, but I'm dead ass. Yeah. You can't, like, because if not, he'll regret it. When his career is over.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited to bring you guys a video that is as old as time. However, this might be our last off-season making this type of content. As a matter of fact, a part of me is a little sentimental. This is the yearly Ben Simmons off-season update. If you guys don't know how this goes, typically at this time each and every year, we get a Ben Simmons off-season video where it's supposed to instill hope within all Ben Simmons fans and the team that Ben Simmons currently plays for. So before we get to the content, we are 6,000 subscribers away from 1 million subscribers, so if you want to help us reach that goal, make sure you subscribe and turn on our notifications to help us get there. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. If you took my Monday Night Football picks, congratulations on 5xing your money. This man used the Caleb Williams free square to turn $20 into $135, but this maniac was able to turn $30 to $1,020. And the good news is Prize Picks is running 2 more weeks of the Caleb Williams free square, and I have some ideas to make us some free money. If you haven't signed up for Prize Picks and you're really good at guessing how well players will perform in games, I highly recommend it. And right now they're hooking up my subscribers fat. When you use my promo code microphone, get a free $50 when you play an entry of $5 or more. I'll leave a link to it in the description down below, and I give away all of my picks for free on my Instagram. I'll have additional picks in my Instagram story at TheFlightMike, and thank you Prize Picks for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Ben Simmons is one of the wildest stories that I think we have ever seen in NBA history. As a matter of fact, between Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, I think you have 2 of the most absurd stories in NBA history, which is kind of wild considering that both of these players were drafted #1 overall in consecutive years by the Philadelphia 76ers. There was a point in our lives that we felt like the big 3 of Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid were going to be like the early 2010s OKC Thunder, which is just wild to think about, but they had the potential to do that. However, there was some development that needed to be done in order for these players to reach their fullest potential. Ben Simmons in particular came out of LSU as a player that possessed a very similar skill set to LeBron James. And look, this isn't a bold take at all whatsoever. As a matter of fact, many of us watching this video would all agree that Ben Simmons did have the talent and the makings to be the next coming of LeBron James, a 6'10" power forward that possessed the skills of a point guard. The only issue is Ben Simmons needed to work on one particular skill, and the late great Kobe Bryant even said it himself.
Christian, how far can Ben Simmons go?
Well, he's got to get a jump shot. It's like, it sounds humorous and all that, but that's serious. Yeah. You can't, like, because if not, he'll regret it. When his career is over.
And in the beginning of his career, this wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, after all, LeBron James entered the NBA not really having a jump shot either. He wasn't nearly as prolific from 3 as he is now. But in the case of Ben Simmons, from his late rookie season all the way to his final season with the Philadelphia 76ers, he was more or less the same player, more or less averaging the same exact averages. I mean, if you just take a look at his statistics, he's always averaging about 14 to 16 points per game, about 2 steals per game, nearly a block per game, about 7 to 8 rebounds per game, and about 7 to 8 assists per game. He's been the same exact player for the Philadelphia 76ers throughout the entirety of his career. And during the beginning of his career, he was able to get away with this. He didn't really need to evolve his game. But in his final season with the Philadelphia 76ers, Ben Simmons' weaknesses became exasperated. So much so that teams were putting Ben Simmons in a position of weakness, and this more or less resulted in him completely completely crumbling. Ben Simmons throughout his entire career was not only a terrible three-point shooter that didn't attempt any threes at all whatsoever, but he was a very awful free throw shooter at about 60%. Now the problem with this is one of Ben Simmons' biggest strengths is driving into the paint and getting easy layups. I mean, the man is literally 6'10", 240 pounds. This is not a guy that you want to meet at the paint. But when you're a terrible free throw shooter, that's a very simple solution. And throughout his entire career, he would always tease the fact that he's working on a jumper, but he never really did. I mean, going all the way back to the 2017 offseason where you see him shirtless at the gym, shooting threes that of course are going in and of course are getting posted to social media because they're going in, with fans in the very beginning actually eating it up, saying can't wait to see him do this next season. And then 6 years later, another fan saying you're still waiting till this day. And that's pretty much the story of Ben Simmons. Each and every season, you got the same version of Ben Simmons, accompanied by a very promising off-season video of him shooting and pulling up from three. I mean, no one's even guarding him from that far. That's the craziest part. No one has any faith in him whatsoever making these shots. And this lack of improvement is what eventually contributed to Ben Simmons' demise. Because not only did he lack the work ethic to develop a jumper, but his lack of work ethic and the fact that he was so mentally feeble resulted in his collapse versus the Atlanta Hawks, where he was so scared to take a free throw that he passed up a wide open layup. And this became the beginning of the end for Ben Simmons. Following this, his head coach literally threw him under the bus.
Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
And following this playoff exit, Ben Simmons was so pissed off that he refused to play for the Philadelphia 76ers ever again, thus completely destroying his reputation. I mean, was it right on Doc Rivers for calling out Ben Simmons? No, probably not, but at the same time, you have to understand that as a result of this performance, Doc Rivers' reputation also took a significant hit. At one point in time, Doc Rivers was considered one of the best head coaches in the NBA, and during this period of time, he was brought on board for the Philadelphia 76ers to potentially make a push to the NBA Finals. The hope was he would be an upgrade over Brett Brown and would be able to unlock a part of Ben Simmons' game or place a greater emphasis defensively to allow the Sixers to make it to the NBA Finals, and he failed at that. And at this point, Doc Rivers was becoming a bit of a laughingstock as a result of his tenure with the Clippers and now his recent tenure with the Philadelphia 76ers. So I could understand why Doc Rivers was so pissed off at Ben Simmons, and maybe he felt like calling him out would lead to some growth from Ben Simmons, but the exact opposite would happen. His teammates were doing everything they possibly could to try to get Ben Simmons to come back, but Ben Simmons wouldn't have it. He refused to play a single game for the Philadelphia 76ers ever again, and this just looked doubly as bad because it was clearly his fault that the 76ers lost that game. Obviously, Joel Embiid didn't help at all during that game either, and his lack of development finally caught up to him. I have zero empathy for Ben Simmons not being able to develop a jump shot because Lonzo Ball came into the NBA with one of the ugliest looking jumpers I've ever seen and completely overhauled his shooting form in one off season before his first season with the New Orleans Pelicans. So it could be done if you really wanted it to be done. But Ben Simmons never did it. Instead, he started complaining when stuff got tough and he eventually got traded to the Brooklyn Nets, which was the worst thing that could have happened to him. In year one with the Brooklyn Nets, he had the opportunity to team up with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Despite the Nets begging Ben Simmons to check in for even 5 minutes versus the Boston Celtics to see whether or not his back was good enough to perform, he completely refused to do it. The Brooklyn Nets would get swept by the Boston Celtics, and during the following year, Ben Simmons looked like a shell of his former self. He was too scared to drive it into the paint because he didn't want to get fouled and go to the free throw line. But he of course blamed this on his back. So Ben Simmons would play up until the 2023 NBA trade deadline, where the next worst thing for his entire NBA career could have happened. The Brooklyn Nets traded Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and in return, the Brooklyn Nets got Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Dorian Finney-Smith. The result? Well, there wasn't a spot on the rotation for Ben Simmons anymore, as said by Jacques Vaughn.
What we want from each guy is to give everything, every ounce that they have every single game. And all 16 guys are in that bucket. And trying to figure out what lineup fits around Ben, what position fits for Ben, how we can make him look good at every opportunity. That's the goal. And I'm still trying to figure that out.
And that's the major issue. You see, during his final season with the Philadelphia 76ers, Ben Simmons got paid a rookie max contract. But ever since that contract, he was a shell of his former self. He averaged 6.9 points per game, shooting 44% from the free throw line and 57% from three, dishing 6 assists and 6 rebounds during year 1 with the Brooklyn Nets. So going into year 2, all eyes were on Ben Simmons to turn it around. And it looked like this time around, he got his teammates in on it, manipulating the masses into thinking you were going to see a more improved version of Ben Simmons.
I'm still fast, I can still jump high, I'm still strong, so yeah.
Looks good for where we sit.
Yeah, I looked okay. I'm getting better.
I got big confidence. I got big faith in Moore this year. You know, his back was messed up and him actually like going through surgery, I think it kind of felt good for him because I think people didn't believe him.
My boy Ben over there in the cut getting right. Yes, sir.
You even got this puff piece from Mark J. Spears and Ben Simmons saying that he has love for Philly, he'd like to play for Philly again, and all of his issues was because he had back problems, which I'm not gonna challenge, man. You know, like, at the end of the day, Ben Simmons is who he is. You guys have seen what he is. He couldn't crack a spot on the rotation of the Brooklyn Nets following the addition of these brand new forwards. So obviously, there may be a possibility that the reason why he was shut down for the remainder of the season following the trade deadline was because he couldn't crack the rotation, but they blamed it on his back. But I'm not gonna go there, but I just think it's very convenient that right after they acquired Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, and Mikal Bridges, Ben Simmons all of a sudden had back issues. So following the Mark J. Spears puff piece, fans were excited. Ben Simmons was looking good during the preseason. Once again, this year's Ben Simmons' year. And he played for the Brooklyn Nets and averaged about 6 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and after 15 games, he was shut down for the rest of the season because he suffered another injury. So now going into the 2024 season, things are dire for Ben Simmons. You see, this isn't like other years. That rookie max contract extension that paid him $180 million throughout 5 years is set to expire following this season, which means Ben Simmons is going to be a free agent at this time next season. And if he doesn't perform or even looks slightly improved or slightly like his former self, that's the end of Ben Simmons' career. I mean, yeah, he might be an end of the bench role player. My personal prediction is you could potentially see him play for the Miami Heat, although you are hearing rumors that Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons have a great relationship, and that's why Jimmy Butler potentially wants to go to the Brooklyn Nets, and we have a completely separate video on that I'll leave in the end screen for you guys to catch. But things are clearly dire for Ben Simmons. So what is he gonna do? Well, this season is probably gonna be a little bit different, right? Because after all, Chris Brickley is posting Ben Simmons at Summit saying Ben Simmons is back to playing all-star talent level basketball. Big season loading fire emoji. Bro, nobody believes this for shit. It's hilarious. I mean, the response is the Ben Simmons cycle, not this again. I thought this was NBA Centel for a second, which is a notorious NBA parody page that posts fake news and just roasts players. Heard this 3 years in a row. He ain't fooling me. The Kamala Harris "You're Lying" video. How many times are we gonna do this? Give it up already. But then, following this, we actually saw footage of Ben Simmons being trained by Chris Brickley. And I mean, you guys know what it is. Ben Simmons takes a wide open jumper and all of a sudden he's able to hit jump shots once again. It's the same form that we've always seen over and over again. And like even TheFlightMike on Instagram said, nope, not falling for it. And look, man, I don't want to sound like the world's biggest hater because of course I want Ben Simmons to come back, and I have a lot of love and respect for what Chris Brickley does. But dude, come on. It's pretty much the same way I feel about a brand new Star Wars show at this point. I just know it's gonna be garbage. I didn't even bother watching The Acolyte because I know the type of content that they've been churning out ever since Disney Star Wars has come out. At a specific point, you gotta respect the fans. You can't consistently be putting out garbage and lies and expect us to think, oh yes, this year is going to be a little bit different. It's just not the way it works. I mean, in 2017, you had a bunch of us believing that, hey, maybe Ben Simmons is actually working on his jumper, and as a result, we could expect significant improvement from him. But he's been doing this each and every year, and his numbers have looked the same each and every year. And then he went to the Nets and he regressed so badly that he fell out of the rotation. Yeah, maybe this year could be different because Ben Simmons' entire career is on the line. But more likely than not, we've seen this movie before. We know how this is all gonna end. And it's really sad because if Ben Simmons had the work ethic, he could have without a doubt been one of the greatest players in NBA history. He had the potential to be a superstar and the potential face of the NBA. He was drafted into a remarkable situation. LeBron James would have killed to be on a team like the Philadelphia 76ers during the first part of his career. But instead, he pissed it all away, never trying to improve, just gunned for a max contract. And then once he got the max contract, he tried to play as few games as humanly possible. If he just wanted the bag, then great, but he could have been so much greater. He could have been so much bigger. And that's the sad part about Ben Simmons. But who knows? Ben Simmons might find his way to the Miami Heat, or somehow he might reunite with Jimmy Butler, and that might be what he needs. We have an entire video on that, and I'll meet you guys there. I'll leave a link in the end screen, and aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.